That's the whole thing. It's over. No, how's it going, y'all? Let me get to what we are doing for the day. So what we're doing today is looking at another installment of my team building videos. If you didn't see my last team building video, what we talked about was what are some of the most common abilities and moves in the game that you need to be ready to encounter and counter. uh, so, things like fake out, taunt, intimidate, um, clear body, we talked about all those random game mechanics that you need to be ready for, weather, terrain, and being aware of all that stuff gives you a pretty solid foundation on how to approach the game. And some of, I guess, the takeaways that we talked about are that when you're, team building, since that's the theme of these videos, you generally want on your team at least one person with fake out or taunt if you can, or a way to deal with your opponent's fake out or taunt. You want to be able to control weather or terrain in some way, whether that's with your Dynamax Pokemon or with direct weather or terrain switch-ins. You want to have fast and slow options at certain times, well, preferably, I'll say. And if not, you just want to be able to counter Trick Room. You want to have physical and special options a lot of the time. If not, you probably want to lean more towards special options or towards Pokemon that can't be intimidated, like Pokemon that are oblivious, Pokemon with White Herb, and things like that. Or Pokemon that use moves like Foul Play, Heavy Slam, Body Press, I don't know. But I think Body Press still things that rely on your opponent's stats, not your stats. Having Protect is really important. Sorry, that thing about body press and all that's a little bit more niche, but yeah, Protect is really important. And in general, you just want to be aware of the type of things that you're going to encounter in the game, like common moves and abilities, and you want to know how to deal with them, and you also want to be aware of how they work in case you want to incorporate them on your team, because they are also really good things that you can make use of as well, and that you probably want to at times. Today's topic is going to be talking more specifically about Pokemon that you need to be ready to counter. And we're going to be talking today actually about duos. So not just about single Pokemon that you want to be prepared for, like Rillaboom or Whimsicott, that are more versatile and can fit onto many different teams and do many different things. But we're going to focus today on what are some very common duos that you're going to see in the Pokemon meta that you need to be ready to counter. Of course, we're not going to talk about legendaries because, Season 8 is over, and I just don't think that the legendary meta is the most prominent, or should be the most prominent meta. So, we're talking Series 9. Question of the day is, what is your perspective on calculations, or how important do you view calculations as being? Because before I made this video, I actually hadn't done that many calculations myself, and after running a few calculations, I think I just kind of saw how important it can be to be aware of this. How much you're going to do in certain instances, more for team building, I would say, than just being prepared to know what's going to happen. Because when you know how much certain things are going to do, you can be prepared to build a team that's ready to counter certain things in certain scenarios. So I do think calculations seem really important. And, of course, last little shameless plug before we get going. If you do, like this content, feel free to give a like or subscribe, or just, interact with the content and let me know what you think of some of it as well, or if you have anything to add, because I will definitely say doing content like this kind of takes quite a lot of energy. So, if you have anything you want to add or just want to show support, I do appreciate it. Before we talk about specific Pokemon duos, I do think that there's some general good counters that we should just point out that are like useful for countering many different duos or just threatening Pokemon. So there's some general counters that need to just be acknowledged in the first place, like Prankster Trick with Eject Button and like something like Aqua Jet, where you're going to want your trick to go off before the Aqua Jet, right? So you need someone who has a priority move that's going to be slower than the trick, or you just need like a really fast Pokemon, and that's just going to be faster than the person that you trick the eject button onto. But it's always a really good, counter to have because you can be prepared to just knock someone's Dynamax right off the field right away. If they like Dynamax a Coalossal and you're really afraid of it, you just eject button it and then it doesn't even matter anyways. But that's a situation where you're going to want those priority moves because once they get the surf boost off and their steam engine activated, it's going to be pretty hard to be faster than them anyways, unless you just have tailwind and you like one shot them. So, Trick, Prankster, Jack Button is really good, although they can, predict it and protect, which I guess then you just try doing it next turn. Prankster, Trick, Lagging Tail is another really good common counter to, stalling someone's Dynamax or making it less effective. If you protect your other Pokemon and you trick Lagging Tail onto their Pokemon that you're afraid about, it gives you a turn to kind of just stall them. They might take out your Prankster user, but if you protect your other Pokemon, you don't really have to worry as much about like taking super big damage. Like you can take damage, but the reason why you want to protect your other person that turn is because Lagging Tail does not activate until the next turn. So, the next turn they'll be the slowest thing in their speed bracket, but that turn you do want to try to stall them if you can. And then there's just other general counters like, redirection is good to have if you're afraid of something and you need to set yourself up to do big damage without taking big damage. Weather and terrain resetting is really good to just have if you need it. Fake out is really good for stopping somebody from setting up their Dynamax Pokemon if they're using a duo. And taunt is also really useful for stopping certain things from happening that you're definitely going to want to avoid. And as we talked about last time, sometimes a Pokemon without Prankster using Taunt like Spectrier can be even better because it can use it on any Pokemon that it wants and doesn't have to deal with not hitting dark Pokemon with Taunt. Stalling a really threatening duo is something that you can do that's just like fine. If you encounter a turn 1 Dynamax that's very threatening, you can make appropriate switch-ins or just appropriate protects and wait for their Dynamax to end, go for a late game Dynamax. You can make a decision on whether you want to target down or target around their Dynamax, and this can put you in the position to either get rid of their Dynamax right away and not have to deal with it, or just try to, stand the heat of their really threatening Dynamax and get rid of everything else they have until, once their Dynamax is over, it's just their one Pokemon, and it's not really that big of a threat. Having good resistances to a very threatening Pokemon is really important. So if you're facing like a Metagross, for example, Celesteela is a Dynamax that Metagross just really doesn't do that much to. Although, Celesteela doesn't do that much to Metagross either. So it's going to be one of those instances where you would want to target around rather than target down. But I do think that, it's just a random instance of like a good resistance to a threatening Dynamax or a duo. Things like speed control, fake tears, charm, eerie impulse, paralyzing, burn, sleep, are all really good ways to just deal in general with different duos. So yeah, all those things that I pointed out are things that can be applied to many different duos and not just one duo. What we're going to start by doing is actually talking about Porygon2 and Dusclops, which are not a duo, but they're two Pokemon that I think we need to talk about, right? So, let's talk about that first. So, Porygon2 is just, a very big threat because it's run with Eviolite all the time. It's a very good Trick Room setter. It's an absolutely fat, bulky boy, and it gets recover, it gets download, and it does get a very good move pool in general. So Porygon 2 is something. Sorry, I'm gonna make sure I'm not like going like this too much and stuff, but sometimes I forget when I'm too busy. And I am gonna have to read off of the slides quite a bit for this, but I think it's appropriate. So Porygon2, you will see most Porygon2s at level 100 running somewhere between like 265 to 270 defense and special defense, and then somewhere between like 368 to 374 HP. The reason why I say at level 100, even though you're going to want to be aware of what it factors down to at level 50, is when you're in Sword and Shield, you're almost always going to be training your Pokemon at level 100 because a lot of your Pokemon you're going to need to go give them bottle caps to max out their IVs, and then you're going to from there train them at level 100, right? So I sometimes do use level 100 stats, and that is about what you're going to see with Porygon 2 at level 100. There's generally two variants of Porygon 2 that I'd say you'll see. If you're going to see Porygon 2 with Trace, there's a very good chance that it has Trick Room, Recover, Eerie Impulse, and Foul Play. You're not seeing this variant of Porygon 2 as much right now, but it is definitely something that you need to look out for. And Eerie Impulse Porygon 2 can be very annoying and a very good counter, as well as just Porygon 2 having Recover makes it ridiculously good. And if it's in Trick Room, you almost want to avoid it just because it has Recover, unless you can one-shot it, or double target it down. Then if it has download, the download variant that you're going to see is most often going to be Tri-Attack, Ice Beam, Recover, and Trick Room. Sometimes they might not even run Tri-Attack and will have Thunderbolt and Ice Beam, but Ice Beam is really important for countering Landorus. And when Porygon 2 gets off the special attack download boost, it goes from, well, because most people generally don't really invest in Porygon 2's special attack, and they're investing in the defense, special defense, and the HP, it's going to have 250 special attack at level 100. But when it gets that special attack download boost, it goes up to 375 special attack, and with max strike, when you Dynamax it, you don't even have to worry about being in Trick Room because you're going to moderate the opponent's speed, and you're just going to do ridiculous damage because, yeah, Porygon 2, if it gets the special attack boost, you actually might have to worry about if it's going to Dynamax. So because of that, a lot of people actually will train their Pokemon, if possible, to have more special defense than defense. Because what that does is it gives Porygon 2 the attack download boost, which, is not going to help a special attack variant Porygon 2. However, you do actually at times see a physical Porygon 2, and you can see Porygon 2s running what's that move called? Or the ability Analytic, which makes its moves 30% more powerful if it moves last. I guess compared to your enemies or on the whole turn, I'm not sure. Really good counters to Porygon 2 are going to be just Taunt. You want to have Taunt. If you taunt Porygon 2, you're effectively forcing it to act as an offensive Pokemon rather than a supportive Pokemon, which, can be threatening, but you're, stopping it from using Trick Room, which is really important in a lot of cases, and stopping it from being able to recover too, or Eerie Impulse, whatever. Trick Room options are another good way to counter Porygon2. If they're trying to set up their, self for Trick Room, you might be able to just operate in Trick Room. And so you're going to make them not want to, use Trick Room and possibly not even want to bring their Porygon2. Although if you ask me, Porygon2 I think is such a tank, and, if it gets the special attack boost can be so good that even in the back, just as a general back Pokemon, Porygon2 can be good. So, being good in Trick Room yourself is definitely useful. Using Knockoff on Porygon2 is going to get you a very long way because you get rid of its Eviolite. So having a Pokemon like Rillaboom or Drapion is, very beneficial. Drapion does get Sniper. So if it gets a critical hit, it does, 2.25 damage. And it's 2.25, right? Yeah, it is. So when you add that together with the Stab from Drapion, and you can give it something like Razor Claw, Knockoff does a lot of damage. And in fact, it can, as we'll talk about in a second, it can OHKO a Dusclops. So, you definitely got to look out for that. Knockoff is great to have against Porygon2, but Taunt's going to be one of your best options. Like I said, you want to train your Pokemon to have one more special defense point at level 50 if possible for its EV spread. This might be seen in the case of like a Dragapult, which runs like 252 special attack, 252 speed, and then it has equal defense and special defense. So you can add that last 4 remaining EV points into special defense. And then it ends up having like 196 defense at level 100 and 197 special defense at level 100, which actually does, factor down considerably for it being when it's at level 50. It'll give Porygon2 the attack boost instead of the special attack boost. So that's, the way to mitigate its download boost. And, if possible, just, take out the other Pokemon first if it doesn't get its needed boost so that you're not really that threatened about it. And you're not like allowing it to just recover over and over and just like be really annoying to you, I suppose. Because if you're targeting something over and over that's recovering, you're basically wasting your own moves. So you can target around Porygon2 in certain instances if it's not that much of a threat, and then Porygon2 is the only thing left, and your opponent might forfeit, or then you can really just start targeting it down. A calculation that I looked up is that Adamant Max Attack Life Orb Cinderace has a 62.5% chance to OHKO Porygon2 with High Jump Kick, which I did actually OHKO Porygon2 with High Jump Kick in one of my previous videos. So I think just that's one instance where I saw that doing calculations is really important, because now I'm aware that it's actually not a guaranteed OHKO. However, I did do it. So I shouldn't think oh, it's going to work every time, but it definitely can work. And that's something to be aware of. Dusclops. Let's move on to Dusclops. Dusclops is, ridiculously bulky as well. Instead of having, Porygon2, we said has 365-ish defense and 370 HP. The reason why you would run 368 HP on Porygon2, by the way, is so that when it's level 50, its HP ends with a 9, and it takes a lower amount of chip damage while having a higher amount of, as high health without having to take more chip damage. But Dusclops has 343 defense, special defense, again, you might want to give it 1 point more special defense, so 343 defense, 344 special defense, and then about 285 HP. So, it has more defense, less HP than Porygon2, but they're both stupidly tanky. And Dusclops is another really good Trick Room setter. It can't be faked out, which, Porygon2 can be faked out, unless somebody has a scrappy user like Kangaskhan. And not only does Dusclops, get Trick Room, but it also gets a very good variety of supportive moves, like Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split, Confuse Ray, Bulldoze, Brick Break, Ally Switch, and Nightshade. So, you can use things like Bulldoze and Brick Break to set off a weakness policy on your fellow Pokemon, or Shadow Sneak. I guess I forgot that one. You don't see Confuse Ray that much, but you definitely see Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split, Ally Switch at times, although it's become less prevalent. And Nightshade is definitely one of Dusclops' best actual damage-dealing moves. However, if it only has Nightshade, it needs to be careful about going 1v1 against a normal Pokemon if it can't burn it. So, Dusclops definitely has a lot going for it, and it's a Pokemon that you often need to just avoid, kind of like Porygon2, even though Porygon2 poses a bit more of a threat at times. And you need to really look out for Dusclops' Will-O-Wisp too. Dusclops getting Frisk makes it also really good, because when someone is using Dusclops, they're aware of what items the opponent has, and that it's just a little extra information that goes a long way, basically. There are ways to counter Dusclops. Taunt is really good unless, you're using a Prankster Pokemon and there's Psychic Terrain up. Having your own good Trick Room Pokemon is a great way to counter Dusclops, just like a great way to counter Porygon2. Dynamax, Cinderace, and things of that nature can do a very fat amount of damage to, Dusclops. So those are definitely like ways that if you really feel like you need to get rid of Dusclops right away, you can. You can try Dynamaxing Cinderace and using Max Darkness. You're going to definitely want like an Adamant Cinderace with Life Orb in that instance. And a timid Spectrier with Life Orb can actually guaranteed OHKO Dusclops with Max Phantasm I now know. So that's another reason why looking up calcs is important. Adamant Life Orb Cinderace has a pretty much 100% chance of 2-hit KOing Dusclops with Sucker Punch. So, like, you can get rid of Dusclops with 2 Sucker Punches and with Cinderace, which I think is really important. Just because you're gonna stop Dusclops from being able to go for those like pain splits, but at the same time, if Dusclops is using things like Trick Room, then you're obviously not going to get to use Sucker Punch. So, you would more so want something like Urshifu, which can do pretty big damage with Wicked Blow, but I actually didn't look up that calc. I know that a lot of the time, Wicked Blow does not one-shot Dusclops, so you do need to be aware of that. And, if you can get the Sucker Punch off after, I guess that's good. But your best bet is actually going to be a Dynamax Spectrier with Life Orb and, timid, 252 special attack speed is going to one-shot the Dusclops. So, you've got that going for you. And an Adamant Sniper Drapion with Knockoff will do an 100% OHKO if it does get the crit. So, you have that going for you as well. But your best bets to counter Dusclops definitely are going to be Taunt. It's just, Taunt, Scrappy, Fake Out, and just being able to either get rid of it or avoid it, because it's a pretty good option for getting Trick Room set up. You could also use your own Trick Room, I guess, technically, and counter their Trick Room for both P2 and Dusclops. Sorry that I'm talking kind of fast. I just kind of know that this video is going to end up being about an hour long again. And if not, it's going to be 50 minutes. So, just talking a little bit fast. So let's get on to talking about actual duos that you need to be aware of. The first duo that I guess I want to address is Dragapult Coal. You might, instead of seeing Dragapult being paired with Coal, see something like Primarina or Water Urshifu, which has Aqua Jet. and can set off Steam Engine for Coalossal. But I would say Dragapult Coal is definitely going to be the most prominent one that you see, because with Clear Body, you can't lower Dragapult's speed, and it's free to use Surf and be like pretty much faster than everything else except for Regigigas. Set off the weakness policy and the Steam Engine on Coalossal, and then Coalossal is free to pretty much run rampant and do fat damage unless you have a way to counter it, which, we'll talk about the counters next. But Dragapult is often run with 252 attack and speed with Jolly Nature, and can be seen with various items. Items might be like Focus Sash, which I don't really see Focus Sash that much. Life Orb is risky, but you can see it at times. I would say it's really risky because you don't want to do that extra damage when you're using Surf, because Surf actually does still do a considerable amount. You might see like an Agua Berry, you might see Weather Goggle or Safety Goggles, just like some sort of berry or goggles or sash. I would say is probably the most prevalent thing that you're going to see on Coalossal or Dragapult. Sorry, and Dragapult is running Surf, Phantom Force, Will-O-Wisp, and can run other things like Dragon Darts, Breaking Swipe, Ally Switch, Fly, and Dive. But a lot of the time, yeah, if it's going to be setting off the weakness policy for Dragapult, it's going to be running Surf. It's going to be running Phantom Force, Dragon Darts maybe, Will-O-Wisp. But if it doesn't have Dragon Darts, it's probably running Breaking Swipe, which is a really good tech as well. And it can run, I guess, Protect, of course. You can't count that out. Coalossal is often modest because you don't actually really need to be beneficial speed nature unless you want to invest in more bulk, because if you're investing in speed nature, you don't need 252 speed to outspeed most things. At level 100, Coalossal with modest with 252 speed has, I think, like 157 speed. So when that's, times 4, you're still going to be faster than Regigigas and anything of that nature. Like, you're going to have 600 speed, and you definitely don't have to worry about it. So it will run, modest with 252, 252. And this, basically just allows you to have more damage with the weakness policy, running Protect, Heat Wave, Earth Power, and, Ancient Power or Meteor Beam. Not everyone runs Meteor Beam, but you can run Ancient Power, and if you're not running Earth Power, then you're probably running Solar Beam. But you can also see in rare instances like Scald being run on Coalossal, which doesn't synergize very well with, Max Flare, but is a really good answer to something like Landorus, which is a very big threat for Coalossal. So ways to counter Coalossal and Dragapult, there are quite a bit, honestly. Like, it's not something that can completely run your team over, but even if you get rid of Coalossal turn 1, the chip damage can be something that you end up losing the game to, actually. So if you're using Coalossal, sometimes if you know you're going to go down turn 1, just getting off that chip damage can carry you for the game. But a way to counter Coalossal and Dragapult can be Follow Me Redirection like Indeedee Clefairy and Water Urshifu, where, Water Urshifu is literally just going to use Surging Strikes and get rid of Coalossal pretty much right away, I would say. I didn't look up the calc to see whether or not it was a guaranteed knockout, but if somebody does set up the harsh sunlight right away, I guess you do have to, look out for that as well, because that's going to lower the amount that the, Surging Strikes does. But, in general, Surging Strikes is going to do a lot of damage, and they can't protect against it if they don't Dynamax anyways. So there's, you got that going for you. Dynamax Landorus, I would say, is one of the best Coalossal counters. You do see physical Call from time to time running like Flare Blitz, Rock Slide, and something else. I don't know. But so Dynamax Landorus, I think, is actually one of the best counters to Coalossal just because you don't see Scald Coalossal that much, and you don't really have to worry that much about getting one shot when you are Dynamax Landorus, even with the weakness policy activated. The best thing that you can really go for, I would say, is probably Tailwind plus Landorus. So, like Whimsicott Landorus is an amazing counter to Coalossal if you have a Landorus with, 252 speed, beneficial speed nature, because with the Tailwind setup, you are going to be faster than most Coalossals, and you can just max Quake one-shot them. Scrappy Fake Out is another really good counter to Dragapult Coal because you can Fake Out Dragapult, stop it from activating the weakness policy on Coalossal, and then you can just try to one-shot Coalossal or one-shot Dragapult because, people will be ready for your counters and try to do things like protecting Dragapult or protecting Coalossal. Trick Room is going to be a really good option as well. If once they get their steam engine done, they're just not going to be that good in Trick Room. And then you can try to one-shot them with whatever, you potentially have, like you got to be careful having Glastrier out on turn 1, but Max Quake, things like that. Water Spout, Earthquake, things like that are going to do pretty big damage. So even if you don't one-shot Coalossal, having something like Water Spout and Earthquake is going to do a lot of damage and, definitely upset the boy. A Scarf Pokemon with Dragon and Ice moves is actually a pretty good counter that is not always expected. Like Latios with Choice Scarf can one-shot Dragapult a lot of the time with the Dragon Pulse, and definitely throws off somebody's game plan if they're using Dragapult Coal. Then there is random things like having a Adamant Huge Power Life Orb Aqua Jet Azumarill with Redirection, because you can 2-hit OHKO a Coalossal pretty much guaranteed. And so, I guess you can try doing something like that, but you can also do something like use Hydro Cannon with Primarina or Blastoise and pick up a one-hit KO. And, you gotta look out for max overgrowth. So, you definitely got some stuff to look out for. Like Lapras you could technically do, but, Lapras is going to take pretty big damage from a Gmax Focalith. So, you got to look out for some things. Next duo to talk about is Regigigas Weezing. Of course, Regigigas Weezing is really good because with the neutralizing gas activated, Regigigas pretty much just gets a free card to be absolutely broken, right? So, with neutralizing gas, Regigigas doesn't have to worry about slow start. Regigigas is usually run Jolly Nature, actually, with 252 attack and speed with Life Orb. And, again, you probably want to invest that one little extra piece in special defense, just to moderate the download boost on Porygon2. Common movesets on Regigigas are going to be Protect, Giga Impact, High Horsepower, and Ice Punch, although you will see things like Darkest Lariat and whatever fighting move it gets, like Brick Break, I don't know, but you will see it from time to time. Weezing is often run with a Shuca Berry and is used almost purely as a supportive Pokemon, so it runs a supportive IV set, EV spread, kind of like a Moongus, where you will split some of its EVs between defense and special defense and probably max out its HP, unless you're trying to run something like a 252 HP and 252 special attack Weezing, because you really want to get that like extra Sludge Bomb damage. Common movesets are Protect, Taunt, Sludge Bomb, and Will-O-Wisp. However, you might see something like Pain Split being used on Weezing, which can be really good and can actually support Regigigas quite well if it starts to get to low health. Neutralizing Gas can turn off the other abilities of other Pokemon, which, also comes in Ultra Clutch, allowing you to use high horsepower on a Pokemon with Levitate or something like that. And you do want to be aware that almost always Weezing is going to be protecting every other turn. So you want to like target around that if you can predict it. There is definitely ways to counter Regigigas Weezing. Regigigas Weezing is a very threatening lead, but there's ways to deal with it. So yes, most Weezings are going to protect every other turn, and if you get the chance, you can try to one-shot Weezing when it's not protecting with a Psychic move, preferably, because you just don't want to rely on them not using Shuca Berry. If you use a Pokemon that they're really going to want to taunt on turn 1, you can try to bait them into using taunt turn 1, which leaves them vulnerable to not protecting turn 1, and you can try to, one-shot Weezing with that Dynamax Mindstorm or whatever you're going for. And then once you, activate the slow start on Regigigas, it's really just not as much of a threat. You can try to stall Regigigas' Dynamax with Protects, really good switches, and things like that. And that can get you quite a long way, because once you stall its Dynamax, you can late game Dynamax and, do a considerable amount of damage without having to worry about that Dynamax level damage from Regigigas. Types of switch-ins that you might do is if you know they're going to use Max Strike on a certain Pokemon, you might have a Ghost switch-in that can't be hit by that Max Strike move and can make Regigigas waste a turn. If you know they're going to use Max Quake, you can switch in a flying Pokemon and you can, make them waste a turn that way. I have switched in Marowak into a Max Strike before and gotten very good benefit out of that. And Marowak, alone Marowak with Flare Blitz can actually two-shot a Dynamax Regigigas, which is pretty crazy. So you might do something like start Lapras, set up the Resonance, switch in Marowak, and then two-shot Regigigas with Flare Blitz, where Marowak can't be one-shot with Max Quake under Aurora Veil. So you do have like a little bit more wiggle room with that, and you have to just like try not to set up your, rain and overwrite how good Flare Blitz is, right? Life Orb, Cinderace plus Redirection can actually be a pretty good answer to Regigigas, because Max Knuckle, G-Max Knuckles is a guaranteed two-shot. So with Redirection, you can, just use Max Knuckle on Regigigas. Then they're, not going to be able to deal with, you're going to be able to have 2 turns to attack them. And your second Max Knuckle, when having the fighting boost, actually might not even need the Life Orb to be able to two-shot the Regigigas. So you might even run a White Herb Cinderace with Adamant Nature, and even though they use Max Strike, you get the White Herb, then you are faster than them still on turn 2, and your G-Max Knuckles will, get that knockout that you need. You can also do things like Prankster, Will-O-Wisp, Charm, Nuzzle are really good ways to just like make it harder for Regigigas to do what it wants. And so I have actually used Raichu quite a lot to counter Regigigas, just because it does get, Charm, Nuzzle, and things like that, and can be really good. But I think Prankster Will-O-Wisp is going to be one of your best bets, even though you have to be careful about missing. The eject button gimmick is going to be great if you can go for it on Regigigas. Roar, I think, is something that is highly unexplored, and if I'm correct, Roar actually can be used on a Dynamax Pokemon. So if you get the chance to use Roar on a Dynamax Pokemon, you can definitely, deal with it that way. Another way is just to survive and outlast its Dynamax, like I was saying. You can take out Weezing, and then you can just try to do fat damage to Regigigas. So, after it Dynamaxes, you can just do fat damage to it. Or, while it is Dynamaxed, if you have a Pokemon that Regigigas is just not really that good against, like Celesteela, then you can just start chipping away at it. So, there's ways to deal with it. Next, Duo. I don't know where to put my face right now. Let's put it right here. Let's say that's okay. Oop. So, Politoed and Kingdra are really good at supporting each other because Politoed gets Drizzle, right? And that sets off the Swift Swim on Kingdra. Kingdra is run with Life Orb and tries to basically just do as much damage as it can right away. Politoed often runs a relatively supportive IV set, but it does often run special attack investment as well. So you don't really see 252, 252 on Politoed very often, but I guess you can. And I guess it would be like 252 HP, 252 special attack in that case. Politoed runs Protect, Helping Hand, Scald, and Perish Song as its most optimal moveset to support Kingdra, I would say. However, it can also run Muddy Water and Hypnosis. Kingdra is almost always going to be running the Life Orb and be timid with 252 special attack and speed. I guess, I'm not sure if it has equal defense and special defense, but again, you would want to invest that little extra in special defense if possible. Or if needed, I guess would be the word. Protect, Muddy Water, Draco Meteor, and Hurricane, I would say, is the most common moveset on Kingdra. However, you can see Dragon Pulse and Scald. And you can even see Weakness Policy. And this gimmick, again, really just revolves around Kingdra doing as much damage as it can while it's Dynamaxed, and potentially setting up Politoed to use Perish Trap. So what they really want to do is get rid of 2 of your Pokemon while they still have at least 3 Pokemon left, and then use Perish Trap and, just not really have to deal with it. Or, just use Kingdra to sweep your whole team. I mean, that is possible if you're not prepared for it. The thing, however, is that Kingdra actually kind of sucks when it's not Dynamaxed. So if you can wait out Kingdra's Dynamax, or they don't Dynamax Kingdra, it's not really a good back option. Like, you just don't want to bring Kingdra if you're not going to Dynamax it, honestly. But, you can, I guess. I'm not going to say you can't. And there are ways to counter Kingdra. I'm actually going to remove my face because we don't need my face in this. Wow, this is going to be a video. Let's see. So, Politoed Kingdra counters. You can just try to get rid of Kingdra if possible, even if you have to trade Dynamax for Dynamax. It's, you don't always want to have to trade your Dynamax for Dynamax, but the thing is, Kingdra can be such a threatening Dynamax if you can't deal with it another way, that just getting rid of it is really important, even if you have to sacrifice your own Dynamax. Resetting the weather to moderate speed priorities is a really good way to deal with Kingdra, and also to neutralize the amount of damage that its Geyser is going to do. However, Geyser is going to just set the, rain right back up anyways, and you need to be aware of that. But if you can, lower its speed, what you are going to do is give yourself a chance, like a little opening, I guess I would say, to try to target it and get rid of it. You can also try to avoid and destroy everything else. If you resist Kingdra really well, there are definitely Pokemon that do resist Kingdra pretty well. I feel like I keep saying Celesteela, but I like Celesteela. So if you can use the avoid and destroy tactic so that they can't, set up their own perish trap on you. If you have a Dynamax Pokemon with a really strong Dragon move that is not super affected by Dragon itself, that can be a really good option. Life Orb Duraludon with, I guess, Modest Nature and Max Wormwind can actually guaranteed OHKO the Kingdra. So, Duraludon's not a bad option. And Hydreigon actually can survive a Life Orb Wormwind while having a guaranteed OHKO on Kingdra. So I have used Hydreigon in the past, Dynamax Hydreigon, as a good counter to Kingdra. The problem is that a modest Life Orb Kingdra does have a 70 or a 37% chance of KOing Hydreigon if it doesn't have bulk investment. So you do have to look out for that, but Hydreigon is a guaranteed OHKO on Kingdra, and Duraludon can as well. Freeze-Dry Lapras can be pretty good against Kingdra, and, well, just for giggles, right, Weakness Policy Rillaboom with G-Max Drum Solo can be pretty good, but I mean, there are good Weakness Policy activated Pokemon that can deal pretty considerably with I guess, Kingdra. Like, if you have a Sash Raichu and you go for Volt Switch and Weakness Policy activate Celesteela, you can, it's a decent option, I guess I would say. Then there is 3 Pokemon that go pretty well together. There is Venusaur, Torkoal, and Charizard. Venusaur, Torkoal, and Charizard just have amazing synergies with each other. It's going to be like, it's Venusaur, Torkoal, and then Torkoal and Charizard, right? But they have great synergy because not only does it contain a fast and a slow Pokemon, but the slow Pokemon can't be avoided any more than the fast Pokemon can without facing a severe punishment to your game plan. Torkoal is often run with 252 HP and special attack with beneficial special attack nature and using an item such as Charcoal, Choice Specs, or Assault Vest. Eruption, Heat Wave, Protect, and Yawn is a pretty standard Torkoal set. However, you might see Solar Beam, Burning Jealousy, and Clear Smog, and they might replace Heat Wave with Burning Jealousy. Venusaur is often run with 252 special attack and speed, with beneficial speed nature because you do want to be faster than things like Regigigas when you have the chlorophyll boost going. Venusaur will run Focus Sash, Life Orb, Cobra Berry, Weakness Policy, and Wide Lens are different items that you might run into. Using Sleep Powder, Protect, Sludge Bomb, and Leaf Storm. However, you do see things like Giga Drain, Energy Ball, Earth Power, Weather Ball can actually be really good for having Max Flare, Synthesis, and Frenzy Plant. Then Charizard usually runs 252 special attack and speed as well, with a modest or timid nature. You see both. I mean, the argument for timid is definitely understandable, but you do see both because the modest nature gives you like that extra damage. And you will almost always see it being Life Orb Solar Power Charizard. However, you can see things like Chardy Berry Charizard because it's 4 times weak to Rock. And you can even see, I guess, like Expert Belt or something random like that. Charizard's going to run Heat Wave, Air Slash, Protect, Solar Beam. However, it can also run Scorching Sands, Blast Burn, and even in rare instances, something like Dragon Pulse can be seen. But again, let's call that a rare instance. So first, how do you target, or I mean counter Venusaur Torkoal? I think Fake Out and Taunt are going to be some of your best pressures against Venusaur Torkoal, because with Fake Out, you can basically pressure Venusaur into having to Dynamax or Protect turn 1. And what this does is it gives you a chance to set up Electric Terrain or Misty Terrain so that you don't have to worry about Sleep Powder. And if you don't have Electric Terrain or Misty Terrain, hopefully you have something like Taunt to stop it from getting its Sleep Powder off. Another good possibility is having a Weather Resetter so that Venusaur can't just fire off Sleep Powders and be faster than everything else. So, having a Pokemon like Politoed, or even like a Alolan Ninetales, or a, Tyranitar, can take you pretty far, I would say. Something else is, you do want to be aware of Torkoal going for a very powerful eruption. So, if possible, you want to try to get Torkoal down to like 25% or less right away before it gets the chance to do anything. However, it can protect. So you do want to be aware of a, protect as well. Tailwind is another really good counter to Venusaur Torkoal, because when you use Tailwind, any Pokemon that's faster in general than Venusaur is going to be faster than Venusaur. And you can do a strong Dynamax like a Fire, Ice, or Flying Pokemon, and then just try to deal with Torkoal aside from that, right? But you do need to be careful of the Sash Venusaur, because it definitely happens. Definitely happens. Countering countering Charizard and Torkoal, if you ask me, I think is a little bit easier. And this is really because all you need is just a fast Pokemon with a solid Electric and Rock move. You will see some people, instead of running Torkoal support Charizard, you'll see Whimsicott with Tailwind and Sunny Day, which allows them to, be fast, and then you have to, plan for that a little more with your own Tailwind or something like that. But one of the nice things is something like Life Orb Zapdos can OHKO a Dynamax Charizard, even with only like 350 special attack. So it doesn't even need to, if it's modest, it doesn't need to have 100% speed, special attack investment, although you're probably going to be wanting to run, beneficial speed nature in that case for Zapdos. You can, reset the weather on Charizard so that it's not getting those, solar power boosts, and if you reset the weather to rain, you're going to be lowering how much its wildfire does. So, resetting the weather to rain with Politoed is definitely going to be a good counter, especially a good counter to Torkoal as well, to mitigate how much eruption is going to do. But then there's direct counters like things like Dragapult, Coalossal. If you have Dragapult, Coalossal, Charizard's going to have a really hard time against that, because you can just do the, Surf, and Gmax Wackle, it's just going to one-shot them, even if they have a Charty Berry. Like, it's really not anything to worry about. Dynamax Lycanroc, I guess, could be like an option. Dynamax Lapras could be an option, but you do have to worry about Gmax Overgrowth. And then there's things like Trick Eject Button, or options, I suppose. Indeedee Hatterene is a very, very annoying duo. The thing about Indeedee Hatterene is that it's almost always guaranteed Trick Room, unless you have the right counters for it. Magic Bounce stops Hatterene from even being able to be taunted, so it can't be taunted. And with the redirection support, you don't really have to worry about it getting one shot or anything like that. Indeedee can run Sash or Psychic Seed. I would say Sash is best, but like you do see Psychic Seed, and some people might run like 252 HP, 252 special attack with beneficial defense nature and minus speed nature. However, I like to run my Indeedee with more bulk. So I think it's beneficial special defense nature with 252 defense, and then some investment in special attack and still sash. So kind of like the way that I run my Slowbro, if I'm being honest. Indeedee can run Follow Me, Protect, Expanding Force, and Dazzling Gleam. However, you also see Mystical Fire being really good to moderate your opponent's special attack, and Helping Hand can be really good to support Hatterene as well, if you want to just go for like a Helping Hand, Expanding Force, or something like that. Male Indeedee cannot use Follow Me, but it also gets Trick Room, so if you really need to set up Trick Room, you can actually just set up Trick Room with Indeedee Male and be like, surprise, and like protect your Hatterene. And Male Indeedee does get Ally Switch, which I guess it has that going for it. Hatterene is often run 252 HP special attack with Life Orb. I guess either modest or just like plus special attack minus speed would be your best bet. It can, instead of running Life Orb, run random things like a berry, a weakness policy if they're really daring, I suppose, or even like, yeah, Babiri Berry, if not like an Aguav or something random like that. Hatterene will be running often Expanding Force, Dazzling Gleam, Protect, and Trick Room. However, Mystical Fire is also a really good Hatterene move because Max Flare can definitely come in clutch. And Indeedee is also well paired with, you know, other Pokemon, so you don't need to use Indeedee with Hatterene. But, you know, something that Indeedee Hatterene can also do is, you know, there's honestly a lot of modes with Indeedee Hatterene, which makes it really annoying. Like, they can do Follow Me Trick Room, they can try to just Dynamax Hatterene right away on turn 1, because it's going to do fat damage anyways, and it's going to confuse your side of the field with Gmax Smite if you don't have Oblivious Pokemon or like Misty Terrain. And then it can also just go for Expanding Force if it wants. Like, it can go for Helping Hand Expanding Force, Double Expanding Force. Like, there's so many annoying things that Indeedee Hatterene can do, if I'm being honest. But there are ways to counter Indeedee Hatterene. If I'm being honest, I think that one of the best is to have 2 Rock Slide users. Like, if you have Choice Band, Guerrilla Tactics, Rock Slide, Darmanitan paired with either Landorus or like Stakataka Rock Slide, you know, that can be a really good way to pressure them into maybe getting flinched, but also Stakataka is a really good counter for Hatterene in general, because Stakataka is a steel Pokemon, and I mean, yeah, they can have Max Flare, so you have to be careful for that, but, you know, Dynamax Stakataka can just use Max Steel Spike and do fat damage to Hatterene. Having AoE moves, which I guess means like attacks all else, I don't know, can be really useful. Like Vikavolt and Landorus next to each other using Discharge and Earthquake can be really good because it basically, you're just trying to get around the Follow Me support. Like, if you can actually get rid of Hatterene before it sets up Trick Room, then you don't have anything to deal with, right? So you can try going for like Discharge, Earthquake. You can even try going for like Water Spout or something crazy like that, like Rock Slide, Water Spout, I don't know. Imprison is a really good option for dealing with them. So if you have a Chandelure, you can go for Imprison to block their Trick Room. You can just Trick Room their Trick Room. You can have Pokemon that are good in Trick Room. Having Dark Pokemon that aren't super affected by Fairy is also pretty good. Incineroar actually still takes quite a bit of damage from Gmax Smite, so it's not like the best option out there. Drapion is my guy, and I will always say like Drapion is kind of slept on, because if you can, like, even just Cross Poison, I think Cross Poison's actually super effective still on Hatterene, and if you get that Sniper, it does so much damage. It does. I've almost like one shot a Gmax Primarina with Sniper boosted Cross Poison. Like, don't sleep on the boy Drapion. But some of your other really good counters to Hatterene because of its G-Max Smite are going to be Oblivious Pokemon and other things that can't be confused, like Licky Licky, things with Lumberry, and things of that nature. Let's see, we are getting to the end. Yay, we're getting to the end. Excadrill T-Tar is something that you're definitely going to run into from time to time. It's not actually being used in Series 9 that much, but it is something to be aware of. Excadrill and T-Tar are a really good duo because T-Tar runs Policy, while Excadrill will run something like Sash, but both can actually operate pretty good with Life Orb, and you want to be aware of that as well. Excadrill will be seen often with 252 attacks and speed, and, jolly nature, but if it's jolly, it doesn't actually need the 252 speed always. So you can get away with running Adamant Excadrill, and it does a very scary amount of damage. Excadrill can also be really good with Razor Claw, and can be seen using moves like Drill Run, Iron Head, Protect, and Rock Slide. However, you can, sorry, I burped. However, you can also see things like Shadow Claw, Earthquake, and Brick Break being used. And, Brick Break, I would say, is definitely not a bad hidden tech for Excadrill. Because with with that one attack boost, it makes it that much scarier. T-Tar can have varied spreads. You might see like 252 attack, 252 speed actually. You might see 252 HP, 252 attack. You might see a more rounded attacks or EV spread on T-Tar, but often you will see it doing something like Lash Out, Rock Slide, Protect, and Iron Head. So it's not a Pokemon to be slept on, even though it does have a 4 times weakness to fighting, so it's kind of bad in some ways. It can also run High Horsepower, Crunch, and Iron Tail, and can even be run as a special attack variant to catch people off guard with like Flamethrower and Blizzard and crazy stuff like that. But the real reason that Excadrill and T-Tar go well together is because, Excadrill gets the 2 times speed in the sand, while T-Tar gets the 1.5 special defense boost, and everyone's going to be really worried about weakness policy T-Tar. So both are actually very threatening Dynamaxes that, if somebody has a good counter to Excadrill, you might just Dynamax T-Tar. If someone has a good counter to T-Tar, you might Dynamax Excadrill. But there are things that counter both of them at the same time, like fighting Pokemon. And that does mean that there are definitely some counters to Excadrill T-Tar. You don't see Hippowdon being used as the Sandstream support like anymore, which I think is quite interesting. Hippowdon gets Yawn, it gets like Slack Off. It's really bulky. It has a lot of HP. Like, I don't know why people don't use Hippowdon anymore. But, ways that you can counter Excadrill. I said Excadrill. I think I said that earlier too. Excadrill T-Tar is to just be good in sand yourself. You can use Pokemon like Draco Vish and Draco Zolt, which, have their own Sand Rush abilities, and Dracovish, if it's faster than Excadrill, is definitely going to do a lot of damage with Vicious Rend, because people honestly don't really run that bulky of an Excadrill, and Excadrill at level 100 has like 185 defense or like 195, like it's really not that much. So yeah, I mean, you can do that. You can reset the weather on them to like fire, but I would say resetting to water is definitely better, and having like a water Dynamax or something. You can try to one-shot or double target T-Tar if it Dynamaxes, in order to try not to allow it to do damage before it does weakness policy damage. So, you want things that are faster than it and things that can take it out with 2 hits or 1 hit. Something like a Life Orb Cinderace with high jump kick is going to be a very big threat to T-Tar, but also something like Celesteela is really good against Excadrill and T-Tar, in the sense that they just don't really do that much damage to Celesteela. So, yeah, we keep coming back to Celesteela. He's definitely a good boy, and give him some props. Neither are really good against Landorus either, as well as neither are really good when they're intimidated or burned. So you do, want to be lookout for doing things like that. If you have an Intimidator, if you have Will-O-Wisp, those are going to get you a long way versus Excadrill and T-Tar. If you're afraid of Excadrill instead of T-Tar, a good idea is going to be to double up on the Excadrill because it is going to be running Sash a lot of the time. Venusaur is a pretty good Dynamax option against Excadrill. However, Excadrill still does very big damage against Dynamax Venusaur. So you do want to be aware of that. Like, I guess you could just, reset the weather and put them to sleep, so you could do that. But that's one of those more general counters that can apply to anything, right? Like, if you can sleep them, that's just nice. Last duo for the day for us to talk about. So my apologies that this definitely ended up being a long video, but, Pokemon has a lot to think about, and that's life. That's Poke life. Poke life. Gotta deal with it all. Okay, so Spectrier, Metagross. Spectrier and Metagross are two highly threatening Pokemon that function very well together and function very well separated. So when you have Spectrier and Metagross, you can use them apart from each other and they'll be really good. You can use them together and they'll be really good. Spectrier is almost always going to be timid with 252 special attack and speed, running either a Sash or a Life Orb. With a moveset like Shadow Ball, Snarl, Bulldoze is what you're going to want if you're running it with Metagross, and Protect. However, you also see Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Hyper Beam, and Mud Shot being used. Metagross can have some pretty varied spreads that you'll see. I think 252 attack and HP is going to be one of the best that you'll see, I guess. But you will see some bulk invested Metagrosses. You'll see some speed invested Metagrosses. And you will see some varied items. It's not always going to be weakness policy, but with Spectrier, a lot of the time it's going to be. Metagross actually functions pretty decently well with Life Orb, and I guess Assault Vest can catch people off guard as well. Metagross runs moves like Meteor Mash, Ice Punch, High Horsepower, and Protect, being its most standard moveset, whereas you can see Zen Headbutt and Rock Slide, and I would definitely say that Rock Slide is more prevalent than Zen Headbutt. While they can be used separately, both are really good Dynamaxed options. So sometimes you can Dynamax Spectrier instead of Metagross, and it's going to take you a really long way. But the really good thing about the Bulldoze support is that Bulldoze lowers everyone else's speed and activates Metagross's weakness policy, but Metagross has the clear body and does not take the speed lowering. So, it sets up Metagross to be doing fat damage and to be faster than most things that you're worried about. Oops, wrong button. But, there are ways to deal with Spectrier and Metagross, right? Like, you can have a scrappy fake-out user. They might protect, but, you can. You can Prankster Will-O-Wisp. You can eject button. You do want to be careful about if Spectrier uses Taunt and they, protect Metagross turn 1. It can happen. You can try using a strong Pokemon that can survive and avoid or confront Metagross. So, you can survive and avoid it, survive and confront it. Your own Dynamax Pokemon that deal fat damage against Metagross are going to be things like your own Dynamax Spectrier, Coalossal Dragapult with Max Flare, Torkoal and Charizard, because, Torkoal Charizard is going to be able to almost just straight one-shot probably will one-shot Metagross. And you don't have to worry about the bulldoze happening, so you do have that going for you. However, Dynamax Spectrier can actually be a bit of a threat for Charizard. I'll not lie about that. You can stall the Metagross Dynamax and then late game Dynamax. The problem with Metagross is that it's so bulky that it actually can't be OHKO'd by quite a bit of things. It can't be OHKO'd by Dynamax Gmax Wicked Blow, can't be Dynamax OHKO'd by Life Orb Cinderace. A modest Spectrier with Life Orb is the one thing that can guaranteed OHKO Metagross. But when you're running modest Spectrier, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to their own Spectrier Dynamaxing and one-shotting you. So you know, there is that. A lot of things cannot one-shot Dynamax Metagross. So your best bet's actually going to be a weakness policy proccing something on your side of the field if you are going to want to target down their Metagross and try to, you know, get rid of it as fast as possible. But if not, you can target around Metagross and try to get rid of everything else, even though you do want to, you know, Metagross does deal a lot of damage, so it's kind of hard to avoid. One of the best lead counters, I would say, might actually be to lead your own Kangaskhan and Spectrier, and to fake out Spectrier and max Phantasm Metagross. But it's, again, I think it's very risky, so your best option is probably honestly going to just be that weakness policy proc and, you know, being able to OHKO them with something. But that is actually everything that I have to go over today in terms of very common duos. So sorry, I know it was a lot. This video probably ended up being about an hour and a half. But I do think it was actually really nice that I looked up some of the calculations. Actually, I think were just really nice for me to know. So I was really glad that I got to look into some of that, and I hope that you did find this information generally useful. In next video, we'll talk about countering more common single Pokemon that need to be considered, like Rillaboom, Whimsicott, Grimmsnarl, Clefairy, Regigigas, and the likes. So with that being said, let's end it there, and yeah, just, you know, thank you.